The woods have always been a place of mystery. Even in the daylight, they seem to hold secrets. Secrets whispered through the rustling leaves and carried on the wind. But at night, the woods transform. The shadows grow longer, the air grows colder, and the silence becomes deafening. It's as if the forest itself is alive, watching, waiting. I've noticed only 98% of you who watch haven't subscribed. Come on, guys, show some love and support. Thanks a bunch to those who have already subscribed. I never believed in ghosts or spirits. I was a practical woman, a mother, a wife. But that all changed one cold October night when the woods decided to show me their true face. It started with Emily. My 5-year-old daughter had always been a sensitive child. She had an uncanny ability to sense things that others couldn't see or hear. I used to brush it off as an overactive imagination, but that night, something about her felt different. We were alone in the house. My husband, Mark, was away on a business trip, leaving me to navigate the eerie stillness of the old, creaky house we called home. The wind howled outside, clawing at the windows like a restless spirit. Emily had been quiet all evening, her usual bubbly demeanor replaced by a quiet unease. As I tucked her into bed, she clutched at my arm, her tiny fingers digging into my skin. Her bright blue eyes were wide with fear, and her voice trembled as she whispered, "Mommy, don't take the baby." I froze, my hand hovering over her forehead. "What baby, sweetheart?" She shook her head violently, her blonde curls bouncing. "The baby in the woods. Don't take it. It's not real." A cold shiver crawled down my spine. "Emily, what are you talking about?" Her lips quivered, and she pulled the blanket up to her chin, as if trying to shield herself from an unseen danger. "It cries at night, but it's not a baby. Don't listen to it, Mommy. Please." I tried to comfort her, brushing it off as a bad dream or an overactive imagination. After all, she was only 5. Kids say strange things all the time, don't they? But as I kissed her forehead and turned off the light, I couldn't shake the unease that settled in my chest. The cry in the night. Later that night, the house was silent except for the occasional groan of the wind against the windows. I sat in the living room, a cup of tea in hand, trying to distract myself from the strange conversation with Emily. But just as I was about to head to bed, I heard it, a baby's cry. My heart stopped. The sound was faint, almost swallowed by the wind, but it was unmistakable. A soft, pitiful wail coming from beyond the trees at the edge of our backyard. I told myself it was just an animal, a fox or a raccoon. But the longer I listened, the clearer it became. It was the cry of an infant, alone and helpless in the dark. My maternal instincts kicked in. What if someone had abandoned a baby out there? What if it was freezing, starving, in need of help? I grabbed my coat and a flashlight, hesitating only for a moment before stepping outside. The night air was freezing, biting at my skin as I moved toward the sound. The trees loomed ahead, dark and uninviting, their skeletal branches reaching toward the sky like twisted fingers. The crying grew louder as I approached the tree line, tugging at my heart with every sob. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling. "Is someone there?" No answer, just the relentless wailing, drawing me deeper into the woods. Against my better judgment, I pressed on. The crunch of leaves beneath my feet was the only sound besides the baby's cries, which seemed impossibly distant yet painfully close. My flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced along the trunks of the trees. And then I saw it, a bundle of white nestled at the base of a tree, a baby. My breath caught in my throat. I hurried forward, dropping to my knees. The baby's tiny face was barely visible beneath the soft folds of a blanket, its cries weak and pitiful. I reached out, my fingers brushing against the fabric, and the crying stopped. Silence. A suffocating, deafening silence. The air around me turned heavy, thick with something unseen but suffocating. My heart pounded as I slowly pulled back the blanket and screamed. The bundle was empty. No baby, nothing. Just the crumpled remains of the blanket, resting in the dirt. I scrambled to my feet, my flashlight shaking in my trembling hands. The trees around me felt closer, their shadows stretching, twisting. The wind picked up, carrying whispers that weren't there before. Run! I turned and bolted, crashing through the underbrush, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The whispers followed me, hissing in the darkness, growing louder with every step. By the time I reached the house, I was sobbing, my body shaking with adrenaline. I slammed the door shut and locked it, pressing my back against the wood as I tried to catch my breath. Emily was waiting at the top of the stairs, her small face pale. "I told you," she whispered. "It's not a baby." The legend of the woods. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in Emily's room, holding her close as she dozed off, her tiny hands gripping my shirt. Outside, the wind continued to howl, but the baby's cries never returned. The next morning, I did some research. I asked around town, carefully probing for any stories about the woods near our house, and what I found chilled me to the bone. Legend had it that decades ago, a woman had lost her baby in those woods. Some said she had abandoned it. Others claimed it had been stolen from her. Whatever the truth was, the woman had gone mad with grief. She had wandered the forest for days, calling out for her child. And when she finally succumbed to the elements, her spirit never left. They say she lures people in, mimicking the cries of a helpless infant, hoping someone will pick up her baby. But those who do never come back. The haunting. In the weeks that followed, strange things began to happen. Emily would wake up in the middle of the night, screaming about the baby in the woods. She claimed she could hear it crying, even when I couldn't. Sometimes she would stare out the window, her eyes fixed on the tree line, as if she could see something I couldn't. I tried to convince myself it was just her imagination, but deep down I knew better. The woods were alive, and whatever was out there wasn't done with us. One night I heard the crying again. This time it was louder, more insistent. I sat in the living room, my heart pounding, as the sound grew closer and closer. I wanted to run, to hide, but I couldn't move. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the crying stopped. The silence was worse. The final confrontation. The final confrontation came on a night much like the first. The wind howled, the trees groaned, and the baby's cries echoed through the darkness. This time I didn't go outside. I stayed in the house, holding Emily close, praying for the night to end. But the cries grew louder, more desperate, until they were right outside the door. I could feel it, the presence of something ancient, something malevolent. It wanted in. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the crying stopped. The silence was deafening. Epilogue: the woods remember. The woods have a way of holding on to things, memories, secrets, and sometimes even souls. I've tried to forget that night, to push it to the back of my mind and move on with my life. But the truth is, the woods remember, and so do I. Emily still talks about the baby sometimes, though not as often as she used to. She'll mention it in passing, her voice soft and distant, as if she's recalling a dream. "The baby in the wood," she'll say. "It's still there, Mommy. It's still crying." I don't know if she's right. I don't know if the woman's spirit still roams the forest, searching for her lost child. But I do know this. The woods are alive in a way I can't explain. And sometimes when the wind is just right, I swear I can hear it. A faint pity